chase scene in the city. We see that what can only be described as a slimmer version of Sam Kinison running from a cop, and we soon find out as he starts to yell and we hear that classic voice that this is gonna be Chucky at some point. JD, right away I noticed the sound of the bullets were pretty much identical to the ones they use in Batman. So it's like a pong and then a ping. Did you pick up on that at all?
No, that's a great comparison, though.
That was my my bullet sound.
Pew pew.
Yeah. They must have used the same company. I'm telling you, those bullet shots are the exact same ones in Batman. No doubt. Charles Lee Ray is hit by a bullet, is shot by Detective Norris, who we'll talk about in a minute. He limps over to a toy store and shoots out the lock and enters. Inside, Ray says, "Oh God, I'm dying." Well, obviously you've been shot. He yells that he's going to get him, he's going to get Eddie too, and no matter what, they're both going to die. Ray says to himself that he has to find somebody. So he gets to a giant display of good guy dolls and kind of stumbles over them, knocks over this entire just shrine of good guy dolls, and he falls on the ground and he's face to face with one of the dolls. And he's got this sadistic grin on his face. Let's listen to Charles Lee Ray transform into the doll.
Give me the power, I beg of you! S'accusate me qua demoni, mortis me poteva corde voce, delle porte quasi tembera. S'accusate me qua demoni, a delle porte quasi tembera. A delle porte quasi tembera.
JD, a lot to unpack here with this opening scene. It's pretty cool watching the building just completely blow sky high. What'd you think of this and the transformation?
I really don't remember this scene. Like, I don't know if maybe I blocked it out or maybe I didn't watch the scene before, or I don't know, but I simply don't remember this scene. So it was quite interesting to see Charles Lee Ray go through his whole, to make a Batman comparison. It does remind me of the scene of Jack Napier. Jack Nicholson.
It's Jack.
Episode in our archives. On his...
It's been a long time.
Gosh, it's been a long time. Doing his whole escape ramble and rumble through the acid factory. You know, it reminded me of that very gothic type of Tim Burton almost shadowy scene.
I like that comparison. So Norris makes it out pretty much scot-free. JD, were you surprised at all that Detective Norris just walked away from this giant explosion with no more than like a little limp?
Well, I mean, a little surprised, but I figured he had something in store.
Okay. So we cut to the inside of the apartment where we see a good guy TV show playing on the tube, and we meet young Andy Barclay, played by Alex Vincent. It's funny watching him prepare this breakfast. He's got this giant bowl of cereal just spilling over the edge, totally just black toast. It was literally smoking as it came out of the toaster. He puts on about a pound of butter and then fills up an orange juice and starts taking it in to wake his mom up. And we find out it's his birthday, which I'm confused. Why the heck did he make breakfast for his mom for his birthday? Never heard of that, JD. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's definitely weird. Annie Camden, get your ass out of bed and put a pound on your son's butter toast.
And if you thought that was a little weird, how about the raspberries that she gives him in the next scene?
See, this is why I just am so uncomfortable watching kids in movies. This is so weird.
Right. Because it's not really her son, but she's like, come here.
Do they in movies nowadays? Do they like CGI that? Is there like a raspberry stand-in? Like, come on.
Right.
Harrison Brewer, you're the raspberry stand-in.
So they exit the bedroom and we hear a news report saying Charles Lee Ray was shot and killed. And then the mom turns it off. He opens this giant box that definitely looked like it was going to have a toy in there. And what's he pull out, JD? One pair of jeans. Was that a little odd for you? I understand what they're doing there, but it's like, come on.
Having gotten jeans and tennis shoes and underwear for birthday presents before, I wasn't surprised.
Okay, well, no, that would have made more sense, but he didn't pull out a tennis shoes and all this other stuff. He pulled out a pair of jeans in a giant box.
Why are you ragging on their family dynamic? That's all she can afford. All the money went to the giant box. Damn.
Well, no, because then he opens up a much smaller gift and pulls out the good guy tools. And his mom's like, oh, sorry, I just didn't have the money this week. I don't know. That bugged me a little bit, but I'll move on. I'll let it slide.
Maybe I just don't get it because I'm not a parent. I would just say here, and I would throw the doll at the kid and then lock it in a closet.
Okay. Scary. We cut to Karen's work. Her friend and co-worker Maggie comes running over to tell her that a peddler has a good guy doll in the alleyway. So they run out and meet him, and he says he wants $50. And they're like, nah, I'll give you 10. He's like, 30. And Karen just jumps at it. She's like, no, this is what he wants. I'm going to pay the money. And then as they're walking away, Maggie's like, how do we know this damn thing isn't stolen? And he turns around and goes, steal this. It flashes his crotch at her. JD, what'd you think of this scene?
Yeah, that's a new meme format that needs to grow and catch on. Steal this.
Yeah.
For those of you that either are going to watch this or just watched it, just anytime somebody says anything, you just steal this. That's it. Hey, what do you want for breakfast? Steal this.
He was like DX before it was cool.
Yeah, this guy's onto something.
Yeah. Inside the store, Karen's boss, real douchebag, he's giving her grief for leaving her station, and then he's like, oh, you gotta work tonight because so-and-so called off. She's like, no, it's my son's birthday. He's like, don't care. And then Maggie's like, no, it's fine. I'll watch Andy tonight. And then we cut to the apartment where Karen gives Andy the gift. She's got pretty much the same box she had earlier, or the day before. And he opens it up, and we meet Chucky, who turns on and says, hi, I'm Chucky. I'm your friend to the end. Heidi ho! Andy thanks his mom, and then I guess let's pause for a second. JD, your first thoughts on the Chucky doll?
Shoosh, that guy is creepy. That little guy, that little doll.
Well, he's not little. He's a huge doll.
Okay, yeah, but he's smaller than Charlie. Oops, okay. Did I call the kid Charlie?
You did.
No, I did.
I can tell you're already going bad on Andy. You're calling him Charlie.
Dude, let's just rename him Charlie.
Later that night, Andy and Chucky are building some stuff on the floor when a news report says Eddie Caputo, an accomplice of Charles Lee Ray, has escaped. Chucky turns to watch the TV report, and then Maggie tells Andy it's time to go to bed. Andy leans in towards Chucky, and then he says, Aunt Maggie, Chucky wants to watch the 9 o'clock news. And she's like, oh, okay, thanks. Time to go to bed. So we see Andy brushing his teeth when the TV turns back on in the living room, and Chucky is sitting right in front of it. Maggie grabs Chucky and then goes back to the bedroom and is mad at Andy for moving the doll, but he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do anything. And she lectures him for turning on the TV and putting Chucky in front of it. And then we cut to a little bit later in the night here. Maggie's sitting on the couch reading a book, and we have these point of view shots of Chucky running throughout the house, which startles Maggie, and she goes up to see what the noise is and sees there's a chair set up by a door, and she kind of moves it, and she's scared. In the kitchen, we see a jar of sugar has been dropped on the floor. The phone rings and startles her, and it's Karen just calling to see how Andy's doing. So Maggie plays it off. She's like, everything's cool. It's under control. I got this. And then she puts down the phone, and in the other room, we have a POV shot of a hammer getting picked up. In the kitchen, Maggie checks something by the window, and when she turns around, she takes a hammer right to the forehead that sends her flying through the window. And we have our first death here. JD, what'd you think of this first death scene with Chucky?
Death blow.
Death by baby hammer.
No, it was. I like it, and I'll start as the movie progresses. You'll start to hear me get more poo pooey.
Okay.
But for now, for this scene, and for seeing Maggie get the hammer to the face, or head, or wherever the hell she gets hit, and fall out the window, it's kind of like typical 80s, and it's just so convenient to be like, oh, she gets one blunt force trauma, then gets another falling out the window to like secure the death. So it like takes away any sort of like maybe she survives, maybe she doesn't. They establish the powers of Chucky or Phantom Hand, whatever we're calling it at this point, and just really puts the grim in Grimace.
Okay. So Karen arrives back at the apartment and finds out the horrible news about her friend Maggie. One of the early drafts of the writing kind of leaned heavily on Andy being the killer and then kind of pulling back the cover late in the story to find out it was actually Chucky. What would you think about that approach, JD, instead of, I mean, it's pretty obvious it's Chucky early on in the script here.
It's two totally different movies. If you're trying to do like a twist Shyamalan type ending where you're setting Andy up as the killer and then pulling the rug out and having it be Chucky, you lose all of the glory and all of the fright that and terror that Chucky as a doll presents, and then you lose the whole setup of using Charles Lee Ray as a serial killer, who possesses the doll. You can't have it both ways.
Okay. Detective Norris takes Karen into the kitchen where he shows her what happened to Maggie. He implies that maybe Andy had something to do with it. Karen gets upset about his questioning, and then back in his bedroom, we see Chucky sitting in a chair, and the bottoms of his feet are covered in the white sugar. Andy sees it and runs out to tell his mom, but when he says it was the doll, his mom just kind of pushes him out, and Norris just kind of stares off and was like, that's odd. JD, what do you think about that little reveal?
Like you were saying, like if we want to set it up that Andy's the killer versus the good guy doll is the killer, like this is the turning point that the writers commit to setting up the narrative that the way that they want it, and they're sort of leaving those breadcrumbs for us as the viewer to discover it, which I think is great.
So in the next scene here, we see Norris with his partner, which I believe his name is Santos, rocking a pretty cool Fu Manchu. And they're talking about the discovery of the possible murder weapon, which was the good guy's hammer, and Norris had stole it from the apartment. And then we cut to Andy in his bedroom. Let's listen to a clip here.
Chucky, huh?
Yeah, sure, Chucky. He's sitting right over there.
Chucky's been talking to you too, hasn't he? What's he been saying?
All kinds of things. His real name is Charles Lee Ray, and he's been sent down from heaven by Daddy to play with me.
Has he? Anything else?
Yes. He said Aunt Maggie was a real bitch and got what she deserved.
And how can you say something so horrible?
I didn't say it, Chucky did.
Andy, stop it. You know perfectly well that you're making this up.
But I'm not. Chucky's alive. Really, he
Andy,
is.
Chucky's a doll. He's made of plastic and stuffing. Look at him. Now, does he look like anything else to you, huh?
Don't. You'll hurt him.
Andy, look. Now, you don't really think that Chucky is alive, do you?
But he is.
JD, that bitch got what she deserved. What do you think?
Yeah, she got what she deserved, all right. But I love these scenes between the parent that just can't grasp the kid's truth, and then they pose the child's innocence in a way that, like, you just can't believe him. Yeah. So I would have almost rather have walked into the movie with this scene to be like, okay, which one of these two are crazy? Is the kid talking to the doll, or is the mom just being a bitch, just like Maggie, who got what she deserved?
Next day, Andy's dropped off at school by his mom. Man, JD, I mean, I don't know that it's truly his aunt, but like his mom's best friend or aunt, whatever she really is, she gets murdered late that night, and then early next morning you're sending this kid to school? Holy smokes. That seems a little off, right?
Well, the education system has no bounds. No child left behind.
Child left behind. Put him in class. So after she drops him off, and he's like, nope, not going to class, goes right back out the doors with Chucky, and he heads downtown, hops on a train. One of the things I kind of picked up on here is you see Andy keeps whispering in Chucky's ear several times, and then they get off the train, and it appears that Chucky's whispering in his ear, and then they arrive at this location. Andy's like, just put a cork in it, Chuck. I got to take a tinkle. And then he turns back around after the tinkle, and Chucky's gone. And he's entered this rat-infested crack house. He opens up the oven door, turns on the gas. And in the house, we have Eddie Caputo, who he said he was going to get back. So we hear some noises. Eddie wakes up. He starts to check it out. He's looking around to see what the noise is. Outside, he hears Andy yelling, Chucky, where are you? And then he enters this kitchen area and hears this noise coming from him. So as soon as he opens the door, he shoots his gun and blows up the entire house. Pretty gnarly explosion scene here, JD. What'd you think?
This was a pretty gnarly explosion scene, wasn't it?
I miss 80s explosions. I mean, they would literally just get buildings like, this one doesn't really matter. And then they would just load it with dynamite. And they're like, we got one shot at this, like just like Entourage.
Yeah, no, you're dead serious, and that's the way that they did it. And just we got one shot to blow this mother effer up, and then they did. And I would love to see all the deleted footage of explosions in movies that didn't work the way they wanted it to.
Yeah, that would be a good video to check out. We're in the precinct next. The cops are questioning Andy. Karen tells him that if he doesn't say something, they're going to take him away from her. Andy's getting pissed now at Chucky. He starts beating on him and pushing him, yelling at him to stop and to start talking. And then over the speaker, we hear this doctor psychologist that says he's seen enough and he thinks maybe Andy should spend a couple days with us. JD, from the storytelling standpoint, do you like this approach with the psychologist? What would you think?
So for me, this is where the story starts to get off the rails a little bit, and we get into what became pretty typical for a lot of 80s horror movies trying to define and pave the path for their franchise. I'm thinking Candyman in our archives. I'm thinking Hellraiser. I'm thinking this. Like, once we get away from the terror and we start looking at the story from a broader perspective, I think it really just jeopardizes the whole purpose of having such a small, scary story. And we start putting in these procedural elements that it almost seems like a cop horror movie, almost like Maniac Cop or something like that.
What was the first movie you said?
Candyman.
One more time?
No, you. Candyman. I'm dead.
Back at the house, Karen is now trying to get Chucky to talk, but he just says he likes to be hugged. She goes into the kitchen and looks at the good guy's box, and she picks up and starts reading it. And then when she shakes the box a little bit, 2 batteries fall out. She goes over to Chucky and checks his battery pack, and it's totally empty. And that's when things are about to pick up here, or as good old JR would say, business about to pick up. His head does a 180, and he says, "Hi, I'm Chucky. Want to play?" And then he rolls under the couch. And this is really the first time we actually see movement from Chucky on his own, other than just being carried from spot to spot. Karen flips open the couch and pulls him out kind of gently, and she yells for him to talk. And then she says, "Okay, I'll make you talk." She starts a fire in the fireplace, and he comes to life. Boy, does he, because he's got some choice words. Calls her a stupid bitch, a filthy slut, and says he's going to teach you not to fuck with me. She throws him, and then he gets out and runs to the elevator, and then Karen races to beat him to the bottom, but she's not fast enough, and Chucky is out into the city. JD, thoughts on this scene?
Yeah, it's good to see Chucky come to life and to get back to the frightening aspect of this being the good guy doll, being a little son of a bitch. And that's what he is, right? He's a little son of a bitch.
He is. I mean, but yeah, when his head turned around and did that 180, I was like, this is pretty cool. I know it probably didn't take a lot to make that happen, but just seeing it for the very first time here, I was like, that's badass. Next, we've got Karen arriving at the precinct, and she's running into Norris right outside the building. Let's listen to a clip here.
Detective Norris!
Miss Barkley, what are you doing back here?
Andy was telling the truth. Chucky is alive, and he killed Eddie Caputo.
What?
I took him home to my apartment. I was about to throw away the box that he came in when the batteries fell out. Don't you see? He's been moving and talking for days without any batteries in him.
What are you talking about?
How I found out the doll was alive. See, I threatened to throw him into the fireplace. When all of a sudden he came alive in my hand. I dropped him and he got up and ran out of the apartment.
Good night, Mrs. Barkley.
Wait a minute! I'm telling you the truth. He killed Maggie. He killed Eddie Caputo.
Look, Mrs. Barkley, I sympathize with you. I really do. I hated what happened in there today. But lying is not going to help
Lying?
your son.
Does this look like I'm lying?
How did you get them?
Chucky bit me.
Oh, for God's sake.
Oh. All right, don't believe me.
Where are you going?
To find Chucky.
How are you going to do that?
I bought him from a peddler where I work. I'll start there.
That isn't a good part of town to be in at this time of night. Mrs. Barkley, do you hear me? You don't want to go down there at this time of night.
JD, Karen's kind of a badass here. What'd you think?
Yeah, my mind is stuck on if I were a cop and some unruly person came to me with this story of like, oh my gosh, the doll's alive and it didn't have the batteries in them and it talked to me and it's killing people. I would be the worst cop because I would be like, yeah, absolutely, let's do this.
Okay, that's a good point.
What would you do?
I'd run and scream. Yeah.
As an officer of the law, if a crazy woman came to you and said the doll's alive, you would run.
I would never be an officer of the law. Too scary.
So let's
take wimp. I'd probably be better suited for like the guy that answers the phone. It's just like, hi, precinct, can I help you?
So two things. First of all, obviously you'll never make it as a Ghostbuster.
Yeah, very true. Hey, that hurts.
Second, apparently you're a secretary. You're Janine.
That's my dream job, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Ghostbusters, what do you want?
Episode in the archives.
Very good episode. I'm kidding. I don't know what I would do. That's hard to say. So Karen finds the peddler in this rough part of town, and he starts pushing her around here. She's like, I don't have much. He's like, no, you got something, girl. And he gets on top of her, but Norris to the rescue. Not Chuck Norris, but Norris in this movie. He knees him in the stomach and then demands the peddler to tell what he knows. He finally says it came from a burned down toy store. Norris looks like he's seen a ghost here. He says that's where Charles Lee Ray was killed. He was partners with Eddie Caputo, and he tells Karen that building was struck by lightning the night that Charles Lee Ray died, and he knows because he was there. She wants to know if Charles Lee Ray said anything at all, and he says, yeah, he threatened to kill me and Eddie Caputo. What'd you think of this scene, JD?
I like the way that it brings the story full circle, so we get to see the elements from the original, or the beginning, playing a factor to where we are in the narrative. But at the same time, it's just so Law and Order, isn't it?
Yeah.
Man, see, he said he was going to kill Caputo. See, now he's going to kill me. Ah.
That's a good comparison. I'm not a big Law and Order fan, but I imagine that's how it goes every episode. Karen and Norris argue in the next scene. He wants her to leave it alone and just go get some sleep, but she can't. Norris is back in the precinct and he's picking up the Charles Lee Ray file. And then back in his car, we see Chucky pop up from the back seat and he's choking Norris with jumper cables. Chucky says, "Good night, asshole," and then starts his high-pitched laugh. Norris uses his cigarette lighter to burn Chucky in the face. And this is followed up by Chucky stabbing a giant butcher knife through the seat. And Norris is kind of doing a happy dance. I think eventually he gets poked in the ass because he kind of like shouts out a little bit. Chucky climbs under the seat and presses down the gas pedal all the way to the floor. Norris can't control the car and it flips right on its head. And Chucky tries to stab Norris, but again he misses. And then eventually Norris shoots him in the chest and that sends him flying. JD, what do you think of our first real pretty cool action sequence here with Chucky?
I enjoy it, but you have to suspend disbelief for a moment to be like, seriously, let's think of the physics behind the force that little doll or 12-inch doll, for reference to Kyle's secret drawer, to be able to cause that sort of to cause that sort of momentum to be able to kill somebody. Like, I just don't think that it's scientifically possible. I would like to see a Mythbusters episode on the capabilities of Chucky killing somebody.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know that this is the same argument, but every once in a while when I'm driving my son and I'm in the car and I'm wearing a hoodie, he'll grab the back of my hoodie and pull it because it chokes me and he gets a real kick out of it. And I'm like, God damn, that little bastard's strong. So I don't know, maybe the doll could choke him.
Well, I'm more worried about how your son is apparently a serial killer.
Gotta watch him. Next, Karen arrives at the place where Charles Lee Ray used to live, and she's met by Norris, who kind of just comes in lurking in the dark. It was kind of strange. He says that he did some digging, and he found out Charles' nickname was Chucky. Seems obvious. And that he spent a lot of time with this guy, and he shows a photo of who will come to know as Dr. Death, and he says, we have to find him before Chucky does. So we cut to another apartment where we meet John, who is Dr. Death, but goes by John in the movie. JD, I know you mentioned to me as we were watching this at your place that this movie kind of plays like Candyman. Could this Dr. Death John guy be any more Tony Todd here?
No, there was a formula for movies like this, and I think that Child's Play definitely plays into it. Oh.
Okay. Well, let's listen to a clip here of Chucky and John.
Hello, John. Over here. Hi. It's me, Chucky. What do you think? The gree work? You know, when I came here learning all that stuff about how to beat death, I thought maybe you were pulling my chain. But not now. Not now. Only one problem.
What?
This. I didn't think anybody could hurt me. But last night I got shot. You know something? It hurt. It hurt like a son of a bitch. It even bled. And why is that, John?
You're turning human.
What?
The more time you spend in that body, the more human you become.
You mean I have to live out the rest of my life in this body? No fucking way! You got me into this, you get me out.
I can't do that, Chucky.
Why not?
Because you're an abomination. An outrage against nature. You perverted everything I've taught you and used it for evil, and you have to be stopped.
JD, what do you think of this scene and really the next part where Chucky uses his own tools against him?
Yeah, it even sounds like Tony Todd just so much.
Yeah, it really does.
If only Tony Todd and Hatchet.
Okay.
But
nice.
again, this is a scene that I'm not necessarily fond of. There's so much exposition in it, and it just seems such a lazy way to write backstory into the narrative and say, like, this is what we're doing, this is what we're accomplishing, and now here's some backstory. Da 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 da.
It's hard to argue that. However, I think the scene with the voodoo doll is pretty neat. You know, he grabs the leg and just breaks his leg, and he's like, I need to know how to get out of this body. He's like, no, I won't tell you. So he snaps his arm, it cracks that off, and then finally he's like, you have to use the first person you revealed your true identity to. And he laughs, and he's just like, I'm coming back as a 6-year-old boy? I get to be 6 again? That's awesome.
Yeah, but at the same time, that takes so much of the horror of this murderous doll and brings humanity to it, but not in a good way. There's no redemptive quality to this.
Okay. All right. Crapped on my theory.
I know, but I mean, you bring up a good point, but yeah. I mean, it's a horror movie. Obviously, we're not rooting for Chucky at this point, but to see that he can get hurt and that there's rules and that there's regulations to what he can and cannot do and how he needs to go and proceed. It's just sort of, it takes it from being completely fantasy and fantastic to think that this doll can just roll out from under your bed and slash your Achilles, to be like, oh, okay, now I know the rule book to how to survive. It just destroys the mythology, in my opinion.
And I also call BS. I think the narcissist in you always cheers for Chucky.
Well, yeah, he kills the child.
Right. Yeah, there it is. So Karen and Norris arrive at John's house, and he's lying on the floor, just a bloody mess. He tells Karen, "You must stop him. He's after the boy." She's like, "Well, how do we kill him?" "His heart. It's almost human." And then he dies a minute later. "You must stop him." And he's gone. I mean, classic cinema. That's how you have to go out. But so now we know how to kill Chucky through the heart. JD, what'd you think of this scene, though?
Again, I think that as this movie goes on, I think the rails start to come off more and more. Now we have this dissect machina of just, we have to shoot him in the heart. Or I sounded super French there.
We both did. It's all right.
Oui, just one fun.
You know, doing some research on the movie, one of the things I found out was the original writer, Dan Mancini, had disagreed with the director, Tom Holland, and he actually got banned from set, and they brought in a new writer who I think changed a lot of the stuff at the end. So I think like the beginning of the movie, which clearly you enjoyed a lot more, I find it interesting that you don't like the ending as much, which was a new writer.
That is an interesting fact, Kyle. Do me a favor, pat yourself on the back, because that was a damn good find.
Hold on, let me reach it. Got it. We cut to a mental hospital. What am I, 8? We cut. So
today, Kyle goes through puberty.
Episode 65, puberty. We cut to the mental hospital here where we see, I assume it's mental, but we see Andy, who watches Chucky climbing into the building. He yells for Dr. Ardmore, and he tells him that Chucky's here and he's going to kill me. Ardmore says he doesn't see anyone and then leaves Andy crying in his room all alone. Outside, Chucky is looking into the building. He sees a guard, and then on the wall it says Andy's name, number 7. And then he goes over and steals the keys right off the table next to the security guard, who doesn't notice anything. Chucky enters the room and then pulls back the bedsheet, and he's about ready to stab Andy when Andy crawls out of the room with the keys in hand and darts out and makes a run for it. He enters a medical room. Looks like a place where they possibly do surgery. And then Chucky jumps down and attacks him and then rolls off. Andy backs into a corner where Dr. Ardmore enters with a syringe in hand, and he tells him that he's going to protect him. Everything's all right. Chucky picks up the medical knife that Andy was carrying and jabs it right into the back of Ardmore's leg, who falls to the ground. Chucky puts an electric shock device on his head, turns it up full blast, and then just laughs hysterically as we see this guy just turn black and bloodied. JD, thoughts on this kill scene?
I do love that we're getting back to the nitty-gritty of just kill stuff.
Yes.
Let's focus on the horror. Let's lose the police procedural drama nonsense, and let's lose the unnecessary mythology building and exposition, and let's just let Chucky kill shit.
So Karen and Norris arrive at the facility. A little girl tells Karen that Chucky was here and he was after Andy. Norris wants to know where he would go, and Karen says, "I always told him if he was in trouble that he should go home." Norris says, "We better hurry," and they leave right away. Back at the apartment, Andy is in there barricading the door, locking everything up. We cut to the elevator where we have an elderly couple who are going up to their floor, and an old lady points out the doll on the ground, and the old man says, just leave it there. Whoever left it, they'll be back for it. And then on the way out, the lady says, "Ugh, ugly doll." And then the elevator goes up a little bit, and we hear Chucky say, "Fuck you." I love that little comedy line right there. JD, any thoughts on that?
I feel like so much of this scene has been missing throughout the entire movie, and knowing so much about the Child's Play franchise and who Chucky is, And to see him come into full, like, just to do this and just to kill somebody out of spite like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I forgot how by the books the original is. Because Chucky's hilarious in the other movies. Like, he's just such a sadistic murderer.
Yeah. Yeah, they do a lot more of the funny lines in the sequels. So back to Andy. He's in his bedroom. He's hiding in his closet. And then he sees there's a baseball bat in there. So he grabs that and comes out of the closet. In the living room, we see Chucky has entered through the fireplace. One logistical issue. Now, I know they're in an apartment. Clearly, they had one that was like out facing the street because that's how Maggie jumps through the window. How the heck do they have a fireplace with a chimney in a giant apartment building? That seems logistically not possible.
I mean, if depending on how the building is set up, if there's just one central chimney that goes down through all the units and everybody's using the same stack.
Seems unlikely. I'm not crapping on it. He came in through a chimney like Santa Claus, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I think that's what we need to focus on more so is him Santa Clausing in.
Right. So yeah, anyway, he gets back into the apartment nonetheless, and Andy is waiting for Chucky. He's kind of waiting for him to turn the corner. Eventually he does. Andy takes a swing and misses, and then runs through the house. In the living room, Chucky hits him in the back of the head with a bat and knocks him out unconscious. Outside, Karen and Norris arrive just as Chucky is beginning this ritual to switch over to his new body. The wind starts to pick up, the clouds start to swirl, and then Karen and Norris are sprinting up the stairs. They get to the door and finally bust in, and Karen jumps and stops the ritual right before it was about to go through. Norris grabs Chucky and throws him across the room, which Chucky gets right back up and stabs Norris in the leg, who falls to the ground. And he gives Karen a gun from his leg strap and then starts to search for Chucky. He's kind of walking around throughout the house. He's got this bad limp. In the bedroom, Chucky knocks out Norris with a baseball bat, but Karen comes to the rescue this time, and she runs out of the room and Chucky chases after her. And they end up in the living room area where Karen manages to throw him into the fireplace that he Santa Claused into, and she shields him in there and then calls for Andy to help, who hesitates at first, but eventually he comes over, picks up the matches, he lights one, and then Chucky says, "Andy, remember, friends to the end." And Andy's like, "This is the end, friend." And he tosses the match in there, and we hear Chucky screaming, which I'm not even going to attempt to hit that voice that he does. But he's just screaming. He's engulfed in flames, and he comes out of the fireplace, goes up over the couch, and just flames out on the floor here. JD, what'd you think of this scene?
It's a good piece of setup and really establishing who Chucky is, what he's capable of, and then watching him burn into flames. I can't help but thinking of the video game Zombies Ate My Neighbors, where there's the little dolls that come out of the boxes and they go hoo-ha!
Yep.
But they come out in a streak of flame. And I guarantee that was based off of probably this scene.
Good point. I kind of thought the film was over at this point. I'd kind of forgotten the ending here. But Karen sends Andy to go get a first aid kit to help out with Norris. And then when Andy goes to the living room, he sees that Chucky's gone. So he goes to run back into the room to tell his mom he can't find Chucky when Chucky sticks out his leg and trips him. And he stands there, he's just all charred up and black. He chases after Andy. Karen slams the door right on Chucky, and he tells her to give him the boy and he'll let her live. Chucky stabs through the door and cuts Karen's hand, and then he tries several more times, just missing her. And he goes back to the other door, and he finally gets through. Karen and Andy kind of run away, and then she fires a shot. It does nothing on the first one. The second one takes off his head. The third one takes off his arm. The fourth one takes off his foot. And he just keeps on coming though. So Karen walks over to Chucky and she fires 2 more shots before Santos enters, Norris's partner. And then we hear Norris in the other room calling for help. So they rush in to see what he's up to. His partner doesn't believe what's going on. Norris warns him to just go in the other room. Don't touch anything. Whatever you do, do not touch the doll. Santos goes over and what's he do? He touches the doll. He brings him right into the room and slaps him down on the TV and says, look at him. Dead as a doorknob. When Chucky comes out of the vent, grabs Santos by the neck and starts strangling him. Karen says, shoot him in the heart. Norris fires and blood flies out everywhere as he shoots him right through the heart. It ends with the head of Chucky saying, hi, I'm Chucky, wanna play? Norris looks at Santos and says, you believe me now? It's like, yes. Who's gonna believe me? So they all leave the room. Andy just stares at the remains before his mom pulls him out of the room and shuts off the lights, and the credits roll. JD, thoughts on the ending here?
Was that last scene not like that episode of The Simpsons with the language robot Linguo? Linguo dead? Linguo is dead.
I don't know if I've ever seen that episode, but that sounds funny.
Well, Google Linguo dead and watch the clip. I mean, that's what it reminded me of. Obviously, potentially The Simpsons get that clip from Child's Play, and Simpsons obviously are known for, palling off of famous TV shows and movies and recreating scenes in really weird and wacky ways.
So the movie's 30 years old. How do you feel like it's held up over the years? It's a cult favorite, so be easy here.
I remember it differently, and I think part of that is me remembering and being more fond of the sequel.
Yes, we talked about this.
Yes,
at your house. I'm in the same mindset. I think I probably watched number 2 first, to be honest.
Number 2.
Yes. I'm kind of, I did not remember a lot of the movie, to be honest, which is always fun to go back and actually watch a movie that you don't really remember, but you've watched it a dozen times. So that was interesting. Why do you think the Chucky character still resonates today? I mean, I know they're talking about a new film for straight to Netflix, and then there's a whole separate project that's like a reboot or a TV show that I've heard about. Why do you think that is?
It goes down to like one of our deepest fears of the unknown and the occult, and having this doll. We've all imagined a doll being a killer in our lives or in our bedrooms, and it goes back to the Twilight Zone set up a similar sort of mythology with episodes, and there's countless other movies that have done the same. But the idea that you would have something so small be so deadly is just fascinating, and I think this movie does a great job of establishing and shooting the first bullet in the Child's Play franchise. And I don't think that they necessarily knew what they created or the power or the force of what the sequels possessed.
Okay. That's a good point. Now let me ask you this from a writing standpoint. If you could take over and write the next sequel for one of these iconic horror characters, who would you pick? Chucky? Friday the 13th franchise? Nightmare on Elm Street? Or would you go with Halloween?
That's a really good question. And I feel, at least to my writing skills, I could write one hell of a Nightmare on Elm Street.
Okay.
And I personally like that because I think it mixes elements of both the tangible, real world and then sci-fi universe. So you have something that's both grounded in reality, but sort of brings in that extra layer of the dream. And it sort of really encompasses the idea of, out-of-body experiences and, night terrors. And there's just so much there that I think that the franchise explores a little bit, but can get into more of a tangible level. Whereas if I tried to write a Child's Play, it would just kind of be silly and just a straight slasher.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's. I was just curious. I that's a good answer. I think you would do good with Nightmare on Elm Street too, because you actually deal with night terrors, which we've talked about on a couple of podcasts. So that might be close to the vest for you. But guys, we're going to be back next week with another episode, and we're switching to the comedy genre, and we're going to 1987 for Planes, Trains, and Automobiles as we dive into November, ready to talk some turkey. JD, what do you look forward to most when we discuss Planes, Trains, and Automobiles?
I'm looking forward to getting to some John Candy conversation again. It's been a while since he's popped up on our radar, hasn't it?
It sure has. It's definitely our first Steve Martin movie, too. So excited about that.
Yeah, I always forget that this is a Thanksgiving movie. This is a November movie. Like, we're getting ready for turkey time. And it's just, I don't know. It's just one of those unique movies that's really well put together, really well set up. The comedy is very 1980s, but at the same time, it's sort of timeless.
Confession time. I don't know if I've ever watched this movie from start to finish. So I'm particularly excited because I don't know anything about this movie other than the general plot. So I'm excited to watch it and see if it's a movie maybe I fall in love with and start watching more every year.
I do think you'll like it.
Yeah, it definitely seems up my alley. You guys can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, CastBox, and YouTube for free. Just remember to click that subscribe button. Follow us on social media at Back in Time Pod, and you can email us at backintimepodcast@gmail.com. It's that time of the episode to climb back into the DeLorean, punch in today's date, and return back to present day. Thanks for listening. See you next week.
Serious question now. We learn later in Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky that Chucky has human needs and urges that he is able to act out on. Does Chucky ever have to poo?